A start. We'll ask Muna to kick off with a karakia, please.
Do you want to stand for that? Yeah. Yep, we'll stand for the karakia.
Kia ora tātou. Mi noi tātou, let us pray. E te atua kaharaua tēnei rā mātou ko te kaunihira o kirikiri roa e tūpau te mahunga ki mua i toa aroaro tapu i tēnei ata. E pai te matua ki a whakatata mai koe ki ngā mema o tēnei kaunihira, ki te manu kāhui, me ngā mema pōti o tēnei kaunihira. I a rātou e tiro ana ki ngā kaupapa ka tau mai tēnei rā. E pai te atua āwhina i ngā mema o tēnei kaunihira, kia mahi i runga i te aroha, i runga i te tika, i runga i te pono. Kia pai ai o rātou whakatau ki te hāpori whānui o kirikiri roa. Nō reire e pai te matua ahakoa te toimahatanga i roto i ngā kaupapa kōrero i tēnei rā, mau anō hei whakakaha atu i tēnā o ngā mema o tēnei kaunihira. Nō reire e pai te matua tiakina mai te wairua o tēnei taone nui, te taone aroha tia nei e tātou ko kirikiri roa. Nō reire e pai te matua homai tō kaha, homai tō mātauranga, homai tō māramatanga, kia mātau katoa, i roto i te ingoa tapu o tautama i Ukaraiti. Āmene.
With it, and no one's allowed to say that word that might jinx it in terms of timing. What can you do? So first of all, are there any apologies? I've got apologies for Councillor Forsyth, but not Sarah, because Sarah's here now with us in Zoom land. Good morning, Sarah. Can I move that the oh, and maybe for an early departure for Kesh. We'll be having a break around then regardless, because I have another interview at that time, but we'll crack on. That's all I'm going to say.
The thing indicatively down for 2 o'clock to follow this, is that going to be brought forward to follow whenever this finishes, give or take? Because the going away and then coming back is not.
Oh no, absolutely. We'll be as optimal as we can.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I have an appointment at 1:30, so we'll have to work around that one. But otherwise, all good. So somebody please move that the apologies be accepted. Councillor Bunting, Councillor Deputy Mayor Taylor, all in favour. Opposed, carried. Confirmation of the agenda. It is it's pretty straightforward. Somebody move the confirmation of the agenda. Deputy Mayor Taylor, Councillor Van Oosten, all in favour. Opposed, carried. Are there any declarations of interest for this meeting? There being none, we'll move forward. And there are also no members of the public here today, so we'll move forward. Which brings us to the first item, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the 28th of May. Are there any matters arising from those minutes? There being none, Councillor Wilson will move and Councillor Bunting will second. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Now we'll move to the confirmation of the elected member briefing notes of the 27th of May. Any matters arising from that? Page. Hang on, sorry, let me just get to the right page here. Any matters arising? Yep, happy to move. Councillor Hamilton, someone second. Councillor Bunting, all in favour. Opposed, carried. So that brings us on to the Chair's report in item 7, which is on page 19 on diligent. 19 on both, in fact. Are there any questions or matters arising? Let me just get the discussion up. Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Just looking at your last section on Rotatuna on the second page.
Oops.
yesterday, via the community committee, we set up sort of a elected member reference group, which perhaps should have some involvement there. But added to that, I know that myself and Councillor Bunting, I think it was, have previously been involved in discussions with the school and council staff as well. So if we can just be looped in with that, so that we, for the continuity and for connecting with that new group that Rob's also on, and Kesh.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
So we'll just note that in the minutes, so it's an action to follow through. Any other questions? Councillor Gallagher.
Just on the RMA appointments, we're still on track. Possibly Richard could answer this, I'm not sure. We're still on track in terms of the new process to have that happen with us 6 months. We've got the current panellists, as I understand it, are up to 6 months. So that timescale is being adhered to?
It is, Councillor Gallagher.
Yeah. And also, I note here, you're kind of moving wider than the RMA in terms of a piece of work, the RMA commissioners. Perhaps just a brief descriptor of what that may involve.
So just off the back of the briefing and the conversation that we had, looking at a policy for external appointments. So the RMA panel appointments are just one part of the external appointments we make, but also taking the opportunity, since we're doing that piece of work, to overlay that thinking and that lens across our internal recruitment policies as well.
Okay. And obviously through either the Mayor's report or we'll be updated on how that's going, will we?
Yeah, so in the lead up to the RMA panel review piece shortly, we'll come back with a briefing for elected members to discuss the new criteria and the weighting for that criteria. So just to make sure that we've got the balance right for you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
Just a question around Rotorua Village
Sure.
Area Q. It's probably a question for Lance, but he's not here, so I'll ask it through you, Madam Chair, to Richard. Richard, can you ensure that, I think it's the Northern Football Club, they've got 1,000 members or something, they're looking for a physical club rooms home, that they can just be brought into that conversation. There could be some good collaboration conversations around that.
Cool. I'll
Is that noted in the,
have
noted
that
in the
noted
minutes?
and we'll follow it up with Lance.
Thank you. Councillor Nigel Rofe.
Yeah, a couple of things. And in regards to what Ryan just said, I've also been in that loop as well as on the Peak Trust. So I think it would be of great value to be involved in that Area Q conversation. Just one thing, talking about consultation on the annual plan and reaching as many people as we can. I understand that it was quite late in the process to get that document translated in our top 5 languages, so it wasn't budgeted for and we ran out of time. So I'm hoping that for the LTP consultation that we will actually factor that in to get that wide reach that we're looking for.
That's part of the time frame included in the program already. So
Awesome.
this hopefully was a minor hiccup, Councillor Kesh. It wasn't a minor impact, but it was a minor hiccup.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bunting.
Sorry, I was just going to say exactly the same as Kesh, actually, with regards to that last piece of work. So just to back her up.
I'll give you exactly the same answer.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question on the Rotorua Village Area Q. Just reading the last paragraph, is it expected that the school will come back on both matters no later than September? Both matters meaning the possible purchase of the land as well as the opportunities around a similar peak type business arrangement.
I think it would be useful if staff explain what the process is going to go, how the process is going to move with their team and ours.
There's no one here to talk to that. I'll get Lance down. He's in his office, and if we can pick.
I know that we've previously had discussions about the land, and there's been various valuations done. So I would suspect that a lot of that groundwork has been done, but there's probably a lot of conversation to go on, in my mind anyway, around the gymnasium and how that might become a quasi community asset too. And I'm not sure what the Christian school thinking is in regard to whether their expectation is that we put some capital funding in towards the cost of that.
Yeah, I think that this would be clarified by understanding what the process, how the conversation's going to be managed, and then we know where we're having all the parts of the conversation, because that's the basis of most people's question here. How can we be involved? So,
and that might be a good role for the group that was formed yesterday with Councillor Dave and Mark and Kesh and myself to be engaged in that, in addition to the other work that council are doing in the village.
yeah.
With your leave, just let you know that Lance is on his way.
Yeah,
So if
so
we
we'll
wanna
hold
move on
that
to
over,
yeah, hold that
and
over.
we'll just
Thank you.
pop back to that at some point.
Also operational things happening with the two gymnasiums, the peak that we're involved in, and that one, potentially as well, being floated.
Yeah, it does make sense to have a holistic, strategic conversation about that area. Okay, so Lance will be down shortly. In the meantime, Councillor Gallagher.
Probably it's related to that, around the access to this Christian, partnerships and access issue. And obviously, beyond the gym to the fields, to the no fence, so as
So
Lance can...
save time asking me to tell him. We'll
Yeah,
get,
no,
we'll get
that's
the questions
fine,
in.
that's
Yeah.
cool, sort of.
Okay, so we don't really want to hold up. Are you happy if we move this item and we come back to it when Lance does arrive, which will be a bit back and forward, but it advances us anyway.
Open the door, Bruce.
Yeah, probably just when we've done moved and seconded. So I'll move the report be accepted. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McPherson. All in favour? Thank you. That's everyone. And now we'll move. Is he coming in? No. Now we'll move to the next one, which is the appeal to the Waikato Regional Council's Healthy Rivers Waiora.
You could have zoomed in, actually. We could have zoomed him in.
True. Yeah, work-life balance. Get some exercise.
Absolutely. Hey, Paul.
Is he here? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. We'll just hold off in the water for a quick second. We'll make Lance walk right in and answer a question directly. That's not.
We only need you for a... Join Paul at the front.
So, Lance, a number of councillors have raised questions around my report in respect to Area Q in Rototuna, and how the process of conversation. There's some members who would like to be involved because they have other responsibilities in Rototuna. What's the process before the September meeting to engage both this new group from the Christian school and manager, the business manager, and councillors? What process will we follow?
To have the conversations with the school?
Yeah.
They're basically just meetings with the board and also the headmaster, which Natasha and I have been having a number of those. And I think, Councillor Dave, you've spoken to Sean on a couple of occasions as well. So we're basically having quite regular meetings up until December last year and just after that. And then he got really busy with their integration matters with the Ministry of Education. And then, unfortunately, COVID's come along and he said he just needed to get over that hump of the integration discussions, because we were looking at an innovative way of working with the school about getting good outcomes for the green space, both at the school and the Korikori Park next door, and what could we do around a potential, if they were going to build an indoor recreation facility and other things like that, what could we do? Because obviously they've been interested in that area Q bit of land, that strip, so that they could increase their footprint, and then what could we do around like we did with the Peak, an innovative deal with the Ministry of Education, with the Christian school, how could we actually structure a deal which was cost effective for everyone and got the best outcomes for the community and the best outcomes for the school going forward in a partnership. So that's where we're at. How could we do that going forward, to answer your question? I'm more than happy if there's a couple of nominated councillors who are involved in those discussions. I think that's helpful from a governance point of view. If you want to make me for me to make a suggestion, I'd probably suggest Councillor Mark and Councillor Dave from wearing the growth and the community hats, because they have the background to this, and that's their tied in with their portfolios. So that's the way I'd see it working, Mayor Paula, and then we would report back through the community committee going forward, and if there was any financial transactions and proposals like that, then that would go through the appropriate committee, which would probably be the Finance Committee.
Okay, so there's a couple of councillors who have expressed interest in this, and we did put a group together for the Rototuna Village design. So we might need to look at that just as to who the right combination of people to progress this conversation. But basically you're saying that we can do that we can put together some meetings involving elected members to report back to that September deadline that's in the report.
Absolutely, and just quickly thinking it through, Mayor Paula, it might be a prudent thing to have the same councillors who are involved in that other group if they've got the time to do that.
That was one. Yeah, that was one good suggestion. All right, so we can tidy that up afterwards. I see there's some questions have now arisen. Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks. Lance, you're probably already aware, but is there the opportunity to work in with the Northern Suburbs Football Club or whatever it is, whatever the name is? They've got 1,000 members and they're looking to land something over there.
Yeah, so we're talking with Mr. Dole just about, we were having good conversations with Rob and his people prior to COVID, so we'll carry on those conversations. They're quite interested in a facility, obviously for the Northern Sports Club, but they're very open to having that as for a wider use by the community and maybe other community groups and other sporting organisations. So he gets that. So we'll carry on those conversations.
Yeah, and he's prepared to put some money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think there's a real opportunity there for another partnership as well.
Cool.
And we'll keep the Christian school abreast of those discussions as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Kind of moving forward, you know, conceptually an MOU, so basically we will have views about, you know, obviously what of the Christian school and Rototuna High School, you know, what relative access to grounds and other facilities, so it's not just one facility. So why I'm saying that an MOU, just hypothetically, you don't get a board of trustees in 5 years deciding to fence off a school, you know, without telling council, without having that discussion. So it's kind of what I'd be looking for is a genuine, deep partnership, you know, and a negotiation. So there's a strategic look at all the facilities there.
We're actually in questions at the moment.
Yeah.
Martin,
Okay. Well, I'm just saying. Can you confirm that you will have a deep discussion around the concept of an MOU, which I've outlined, Mr. Vivorton?
Great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Just a question, Lance, around the discussions you've had to date regarding the gymnasium. Is that expected that we might need to make some provision in the long-term plan for some sort of grant, as we did to the Peak, towards the capital cost of the gymnasium?
Not for capital. We're looking at structuring a deal around the land.
The land that we've got to sell them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But there may be around operating costs, because you know operating a facility does cost money, but there's also revenue. So there'll be a whole business case around that. I wouldn't see it being significant sums of money.
Right.
It wouldn't be any more than what we're paying the Peak.
But it would follow the model that we've got at the Peak, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lance. That's all the questions. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry. Councillor Van Oosten.
You've mentioned the Peak and this possible other arrangement with the Hamilton Christian School. And it does set up a bit of a plan for future arrangements. Would you see any of those happening in other growth areas around the city?
Yes, and we've been talking to Ministry of Education about that because they have plans for various upgrades to schools and building other schools. So I think the model that we've established at the Peak is something, and it probably wouldn't be exactly the same, but that's something that we're looking at doing so that the taxpayer dollar and the ratepayer dollar can be combined in the most cost-effective way possible for the best outcomes for the school, but also the community. So I think we've got some real opportunities there in our different growth areas. So the simple answer to your question is definitely yes.
Okay, thank you. And you wouldn't want to speculate on where that might be?
Well, one we could look at is Melville High School. They're looking at doing a large upgrade to that school over the next wee while. And then obviously councillors have been interested when MOE came in couple of months ago now, wasn't it? Or was it on Zoom? I'm getting confused. But we've got other growth fronts like Rotorua, obviously, and some of the other growth areas as well. So, but probably Melville High School is probably the first opportunity, notwithstanding the fact that we're still got to have a conversation with the University of Waikato moving forward as well.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, sorry, in the best tradition of Councillor Gallagher, would you agree, Lance, that the potential collection of recreation facilities up in Rotorua, including Te Ao Marama School, which has got some too, might make it sort of a more potentially a regional usable by a regional and even smaller national events up there when you're talking about the amount of floor space, for instance, in gymnasiums and that in future?
Absolutely. So we've got 4 courts at the Peak. If the Christian school, if that came to fruition, we had another couple of courts. Then we have sub-regional, regional tournaments, but we would definitely be on the hunt for national tournaments for a whole bunch of sports. And as we know, it's not just professional sport like at FMG Waikato Stadium that creates economic benefits to the city, but having things like the Colgate Games, having national volleyball tournaments, national basketball tournaments, even if their age group, brings a lot of people into the city using motels and eating out and things like that, which provides significant benefits to the city. Hamilton does quite well on that, but we can even do better, in my view.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you for coming. Oh, no, every time I think we've got through the questions, another one pops up. Councillor
Just
Bunting.
a very quick question. Has the Peak organisation, so it's obviously, I can see where this is heading, it becomes a bit of a management company for many, many venues. Has it got a growth plan so it can cope? I mean, I'm just thinking about the sustainability of that.
Yes. So Liz, the manager, is a very experienced recreation professional.
Yep.
And she has views that the Peak, the Rotorua Recreation Centre Trust, and the trust deed allows for it to expand what it does. We'd be looking at it potentially running the facility at the Christian school, if that came to fruition. They're open to that discussion. Right. Talking to Mr. Dole, whether the Peak would run any clubroom type or hubbing facility that was on Korikori Park, that's another option as well. And just remembering there have been discussions when we looked at the options for Te Rapa Sports Drome previously, whether or not the Peak, the Trust would actually run that in the future. And it said yes, but it had some conditions which we probably need to revisit during the LTP.
Okay, great. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you. Now there absolutely are no further questions for you. Thanks, Lance, for coming down. We've already...
Also, excuse me.
We've already moved and seconded it. So now we're back to the next item, which is the appeal to Waikato Regional Council's Healthy Rivers Waiora. Welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Mayor Paula and councillors and staff. I'll make a very brief introduction. Here I have with me Mary-Ann McIntosh from Tompkins Wake, who has been involved with council staff all through the Healthy Rivers plan change process. The council report in front of you recommends that the council lodges an appeal against Waikato Regional Council's decisions on 7 provisions in the proposed Healthy Rivers Plan Change PC1 and seeks the addition of 2 new definitions. It also recommends becoming a Section 274 party to other appeals that have the potential to affect the council's interests. So the PC1 includes new objectives, policies and rules in the Waikato Regional Plan to improve management of contaminants discharged to land and water in the Waikato and Waipa River catchments. It focuses on managing 4 contaminants: nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment and bacteria. It is the Regional Council's first step towards achieving, over an 80-year period, water quality in the Waikato and Waipa rivers and their tributaries that is safe for swimming and harvesting food. So the Council will face significant technical challenges and significant future costs because of Plan Change 1. The draft notice of appeal, which is appended to the Council report, is self-explanatory. All the appeal points seek to improve the clarity and certainty of Plan Change 1 on matters relevant to Council's interests. All but one of the appeal points should be able to be resolved in Environment Court mediation, as they are not considered to be controversial in the context of the decision's version of the plan change. The one exception relates to Policy 13I, which is about mixing zones. Now, a mixing zone is a section of a river or stream immediately downstream of a point source discharge in which compliance with the relevant water quality standards is not required. The discharge can mix with the water body and be diluted by it before compliance with the standard is measured at the downstream end of the mixing zone. The existing operative regional plan provides for mixing zones, and the Council's wastewater discharge consent for the Puketi wastewater treatment plant relies on provision for reasonable mixing. If a mixing zone downstream of the discharge were unacceptable, then additional treatment would be required to meet the specified water quality standards at the discharge point. For the Puketi wastewater treatment plant, the cost of the additional treatment would be of the order of millions of dollars. The amendments, the notice of appeal seeks to Policy 13I seeks to retain the status quo with respect to mixing zones as part of a staged approach to implementing Te Ture Whaimana in accordance with Policy 13D. So because of the sensitivity of this issue, it may need to be heard in the court. And that concludes my brief introduction to this item.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillors, just to note, though I don't think this gives me a conflict of interest, but just note to put on the record, of course, I'm the co-chair of the WRA, which has a primary interest in Healthy Rivers Waiora through the Te Ture Whaimana. Having said that, we've never discussed that. As I mentioned to you before, I've had a half-day induction and no more involvement from, so I'm not thinking that this has any bearing on my ability to discuss this. And of course, you will be all aware that I was on the Healthy Rivers Waiora plan, original plan, but that has been superseded and has gone a long course down the road since I was involved on it. So we'll take some questions. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Paragraphs 4 and 5, where you mentioned about the word council, that is the City Council, not the Waikato Regional Council.
Yes.
Yep, okay. Do you think that the Waikato Regional Council plan is following strictly the government directive around the clean waters, or do you think the Waikato Regional Council are trying to establish some sort of gold standard around this when there are alternative ways of achieving a clean waters outcome at perhaps a much lower cost?
The key driver is the vision and strategy, Te Ture Whaimana, the vision and strategy for the Waikato River, which is enshrined in legislation and is the overarching planning document for activities in the Waikato catchment that can affect the river. So that's a standalone piece of legislation. There are ongoing reform of the RMA and of since the regional council started out on the process of preparing this plan change, a new version of the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management has come into effect, and the government has recently announced that there are further amendments coming later this year to the the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management. So it's not a case really of the regional, in my view, of the regional council trying to establish a gold standard, as you say. It's been driven by the vision and strategy. The regional council convened a collaborative stakeholder group which had representative all key stakeholders, industries, and the local government was also represented in that. And they collectively, collaboratively decided how they would respond to the vision and strategy and implement that. And this is the result. Well, it's gone. It's been taken out of the hand of the collaborative stakeholder group, and it's gone through the process. We had hearings that took almost a whole year, and the hearings panel have deliberated and have come out with the decisions version, which they recommended to the regional council. Regional council has adopted that decisions version. So we are where we are now.
So you think Waikato Regional Council have to date anyway adopted a pretty pragmatic approach and interpretation of what they need to do at this stage?
I think the short answer is yes, but it's through that collaborative stakeholder group that collectively decided what are we as a community going to do to meet this goal, the objectives of the vision and strategy.
So given that there's more changes to come, which we don't know about at this stage, and of course Waikato Regional Council won't know about, are we heading down a pathway of, a bottomless pit in terms, because when I talk about Waikato Regional Council spend, it also affects Hamilton ratepayers too, but in addition to the ongoing increased spending that Hamilton City Council will need to do to comply with whatever these unknown amendments are likely to be?
I think probably the unknown amendments are likely to catch up perhaps with where Waikato is, because the vision and strategy, it's about cleaning up the rivers.
Yep.
So
No, I understand that.
Yeah, so I there will be...
But the devil can be in the detail, can't
yes,
it?
indeed.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to pay particular attention to the wording of policies and rules to make sure that we're not caught by that detail.
Yeah.
So it's all about cleaning up the rivers and making them so that people can swim in them safely from a water quality perspective.
Okay. Thank you for the answers.
Thank you.
Good Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bunting?
Thank you. I'm interested in point 38, and it's similar to Rob's question here. If we have to end up with a mixing zone downstream of the wastewater peak treatment plant, you kind of say it's in the order of millions of dollars. Now, pretty much everything we do is in the order of millions of dollars. Do you know how many millions of dollars, roughly?
No, we don't. I'd just like to clarify, there is already a mixing zone downstream, and we are wishing to retain the ability to have a mixing zone.
Right.
Because otherwise we're going to have to increase the treatment of the water before it leaves the end of the pipe.
Yeah, okay. But you don't have an idea of, is it millions, billions?
No, it's
Brazilians?
No, we've just we haven't done that detailed analysis, and the analysis is going to be expensive in itself. So there's no point in doing the analysis until we actually know what we're aiming for.
Right.
And the plan change, once it's confirmed, gone through all of the appeal process and becomes operative, then that will set, we'll know what we're aiming for, and then that'll be the appropriate time to quantify what the cost will be.
And is this likely to be something that happens nationwide if this happens here? Is this a standard that's being set, do you think, or?
Well, eventually, yes, it will, given the government's moves to further reform the national policy statement freshwater management to achieve cleaner rivers. Yes, it will happen nationally, but this plan change, of course, just relates to the Waikato catchment.
Okay, yeah, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Oosten.
Thank you. Thanks for the report and for your explanations today. I worry about reputational risk, and is there the possibility that by taking up an appeal that could be interpreted in a negative way, or see us potentially criticised for not holding the same goals, maybe, as might be set out by the Regional Council?
Well, I will respond first, and then Marianne has got something to say. The notice of appeal's got a paragraph in there saying that the council supports the vision and strategy. I mean, in effect, we have no choice because legislation says that's it, and you've got to do that. And the appeal points are seeking to get clarity and certainty so that the outcomes that the plan change is trying to achieve will actually be achieved. The sensitive one is this policy 13I. The plan change is based on a staged approach. It's been accepted that we can't, in a short period of time, clean up the rivers to the desired extent. It's going to take, they've adopted 80 years as that time. So we're wanting, our appeal point on this matter is sort of leveraging on that underpinning of the plan change, that we don't necessarily have to do away with mixing zones in the first 10 years of the life of this journey. It can be staged, because we're not. There's even questions as to whether the technology exists to achieve this, and that's another reason why they've established, allowed for the 80-year period. So it's that appeal point is not inconsistent with the philosophy of Plan Change 1 itself.
Thank you, Marianne. Turn your mic off, Paul. And we turn Marianne's mic on, please.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I think just picking up the point around reputational risk, Council's been involved in the plan change process throughout, so its support for the vision and strategy and the nature of the relief that it's sought has been voiced, if you like, to the commissioners that heard the submissions, and all of the other key stakeholders who also presented at the hearings. And I think what's in the notice of appeal is consistent with that. The way that submissions have been presented to date and the drafting of the notice of appeal, as Paul has pointed out, makes it very clear what Council's position is on the vision and strategy overall. But as was said before, the devil's in the detail, and that is the issue of policy 13I. I mean, there's the fact that it says 13I, there's a whole lot of letters before that are all part of the mix as far as that policy is concerned. So it's about getting that detail set right so that when Council comes to make an application for resource consent to renew for example, discharge pukiri.
Marianne, just to
that-
make it really clear though, this is the process that's laid out in front of us. An appeal isn't a bad thing.
No, it's not, and that's, yes, exactly, and there's going to be numerous others, there's over 1,000 submissions, so there's going to be hundreds of appeals, and I don't think anyone, it is a question that's often asked, what are the optics of filing this notice, but I think that there's minimal risk to council of that being negative.
Thanks, it's
Councillor
more than
Taylor,
adequate.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Southgate. Maxine's initial question, I think, touched on something I was going to ask. I was wondering initially, at what stage would this sort of extra investment in the treatment process be inevitable anyway for us? But you seem to have kind of answered that actually it's not really even conceivable at the moment. I mean, it's an unknown to actually be able to get treatment to this point anyway.
We know that there's in addition to the changing water quality standards, we've also got urban growth taking place, which is meaning we're having greater volumes of wastewater arriving at the treatment plant to be dealt with and disposed of. So there is already projects were budgeted at hundreds of millions in the long-term plan to deal with that. Myri Porter is the manager for City Waters. Is here. Do you want to? She might be able to answer your question in more detail.
So in determining the level of technology that's required, it really, it's driven from consent conditions. So when we go for a resource consent, Waikato Regional Council will determine what conditions of discharge are required and where that assessment of effects is taken, is actually calculated at. So it very much, the level of technology that's required at the plant or the level of treatment is very much reflective of the level of BOD or TSS or nitrogen that is required to be in the discharge. So it's really hard to estimate what the cost of that technology or treatment will be until we know what resource consent limits we're actually trying to achieve. So, but we do know that if we don't have a mixing zone, there will be a requirement for a much more stringent level of treatment, and that is likely to really push, at the moment, push the barriers of our technology, and which will require a significant investment of millions.
Okay. So it's not something that we're going to have to do anyway at some stage? We're not just putting off something that we're going to have to do at some stage?
Yeah, I think we're trying to stage.
Yeah, it's all about the stage. We know that there's going to be a constant need to increase the level or reduce the level of contaminants that are discharged back into the river, and that will require increased technology to do that.
Right, so it's an evolving process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on that question, sorry, might involve you, Myri. Have we got physical constraints on the existing Puketi site should we need to stage it or otherwise? Are we limited by physical geography?
We're actually very fortunate at our Puketi wastewater treatment plant site in that back in the 70s when the city engineers were planning it, they procured a lot of land. So we do have capacity to expand at that site. But I guess you've got to also consider that technology is going to change, and that doesn't necessarily mean footprint. You need large footprint. So conventional treatment is very land hungry at the moment, but the way that technology is moving is that that footprint is coming down and being reduced. So there is capacity with changing technology to expand at that plant.
And there's also capacity within particularly large commercial enterprises for different types of treatment as well before it even gets to our plant as well. So the whole technology space is changing quite fast. Probably not fast enough in this context, but it is changing.
I guess a further question, given our work we're doing on 3 waters and the potential for another wastewater treatment plant, is that would potentially help as well, or take pressure off one site in terms of some of these developments?
Potentially. I mean, Hamilton is quite unusual in that we only have one treatment plant currently, and so we're quite a large city for one treatment plant, but that is, yeah, that's all part of the discussion about, dealing with growth and how you accommodate that, and resilience as well, so.
Okay, thanks.
But your question's correct, is that as we look at other opportunities, there may be collaboration opportunities with other territorials as well, and that's always been part of our discussion is, there is a certain degree of economies of scale for the bigger plants to cover a greater population as well. And so there may well be options as well in terms of how we split our load effectively.
Yes, definitely.
Councillor Bunting.
Just on that, sorry.
And then I have Sarah.
Thank you.
Just so you know, Sarah.
I got Sarah first?
No, don't go, and then I'll get to Sarah. I just wanted her to know I hadn't forgotten her.
Oh, cool, okay, well, I'm not sitting in front of this one, Sarah, because I know it's something we've talked about, and this is now just getting really interesting. And forgive me for going a little bit wide with this, but are we far with the technology from becoming energy generation plants with our water treatment? And hence that brings in, you're talking about collaboration with other people, for example, well networks and the likes. Are we far from that point in our evolution?
I think we've already started on that journey in terms of resource recovery, but there is still a long way to go.
Right.
But it's definitely very topical in any discussion about upgrades. Is how can we utilise the gas? How can we utilise the heat? How can we minimise the electricity that we use? How can we export electricity out into the network, etc. So how can we reuse water? So instead of using potable water all the time, can we use reuse the discharge and the effluent? So all those are being discussed at the moment.
Yeah, because I'm just sort of mischievously putting it out there that there's a rather large lines company that just seems to have a lot of money that's come in recently due to a certain sale, and they might perhaps.
To be fair, there's actually a lot of technology out there that is probably would potentially challenge the longevity of lines companies as well. Yeah. There's a lot of self-generation, micro-generation. There's a whole lot of technology which may well lend to smaller grid, community-orientated grids and stuff like that. And one of the and Well's very much aware of that, and that's what they're striving to do, is try and meet that need in advance. So we have very good and robust conversations at lots of levels across the entire organisation. With Well as well, and I've always thought with Well as well. I've often thought that given the space that we do have at Phuket, it might lend itself to solar generation and so forth like that, given the location as well, where it's potentially north facing and mildly westerly.
Exactly where it's going.
So there's some aspects in there where we can work with the likes of a lines company for delivering that power.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. A few questions. So, you mentioned that it would likely be controversial, the mixing issue, and that would be the one thing that we wouldn't be able to potentially resolve via mediation. Who are you expecting to, I guess, oppose what we're asking for?
I think there will be a lot of parties, including our neighbouring local, territorial authorities, who will be potentially appealing on this point, and also the bigger industries that have major point source discharges. They will all be concerned about the loss of ability to use mixing zones. So that's a group of potential appellants who are seeking to retain mixing zones. I guess any of the groups that are seeking to accelerate achievement of improved water quality would be opposed to that. That could include the regional council itself, iwi groups, Yes, non-NGO organisations with an environmental focus, fish and game and the likes. So there'll be a spectrum of views and I guess a spectrum of proposed relief or ways of dealing with this too. So we won't know, of course, until the appeals close.
Okay. So do we know Waikato Tainoi's view in terms of this point?
We haven't, Hamilton City Council hasn't specifically sought their view. We can say their view is the vision and strategy to Turiwhai Mana. You know, they want, and there's 13 objectives in that broad-ranging objectives, including having...
Another thing was just following on from Councillor Mark's question around the likely costs if we can't have mixing zones with this staged approach. Wouldn't we need to work out that cost fairly quickly anyway, given that to justify those mixing zones, you'd have to show that it was, I guess, the most practicable approach in terms of balancing environmental and financial considerations?
That process will occur at the time of renewing the discharge consent for the wastewater treatment plant, and that could happen. The regional council is able to, before the consent expires, review the conditions and require change the conditions so that they're in line with this plan change. So an important consideration, which is in the RMA and is also provided for in this plan change, is the concept of the best practicable option. When you're seeking a consent to discharge wastewater to land or water, you've got to demonstrate that your proposal is the best practicable option for managing those contaminants. And that includes environmental considerations as well as economic ones. Any other comments?
Yeah. Okay. So you expect that it's a while away before we need to know what those costs potentially are? We may not need to know them for a while. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, it would be premature to go and engage consultants and spend tens of thousands of dollars having them guess something when it could be several years down the track before we actually have to need that information. We know it's going to. There's a big bill coming. We just don't know what it is.
Okay. And following on from Deputy Mayor Jeff's question just around, I guess, the staged approach, and I'm wondering how do we, if these costs are kind of unknown and requirements unknown at this stage, how do we prepare for the long-term plan in terms of ensuring that we've got the right investment earmarked in there, given that this is, I understand that, within 10 years or so, we will need to be looking at upping our game in terms of these mixing zones and standards.
So I guess we've tried to anticipate as much as possible in our long-term planning, but we do have to rely on what we know in the here and now. But I guess we're waiting to see what happens with this process and with this appeal to actually further shape what future planning will look like. But we know that our consent for the wastewater treatment plant, for instance, expires in 2027, and we've already started work to identify what kind of technologies would be necessary at that point to upgrade to meet what we expect to be the new level of quality that's required.
Yeah, so, and you're expecting you'd be able to have that in time for the long-term plan, so?
Yes, we've got plans in place now for upgrades. It's just a matter of how they are, I guess, refined as we know, as we get more information from these processes.
Yeah, okay. Final thing was just the wellbeing considerations. I thought they were kind of maybe a little bit lacking in the report, and it's something I've noticed in a few reports. It was just that the economic wellbeing statement there looked at, you know, the impact of the amendments that we're seeking, but the other ones didn't. Are there any considerations that we should, I guess, be keeping in mind in terms of, you know, the environmental, social and cultural well-beings in terms of these amendments that we're seeking?
I think those aspects are covered off by the fact that we are supporting the vision and strategy.
Sorry, that's a bit quiet.
Sorry, thank you. I think though the additional well-beings are addressed in some ways through the vision and strategy itself, and council supports that. They were discussed throughout the hearing process on submissions, but perhaps that may be something to consider for future reporting if further information is required on those other aspects.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a couple of questions from myself also. Interesting to see how this is progressing. Now, one is the constructed wetlands approach. That makes sense to me, by the way. But in terms of, you know, you wouldn't want people swimming in those constructed swale wetlands inside subdivisions in Hamilton that are collecting all the stormwater. But presumably we still hold that those wetlands have a place in improving the biodiversity of the city in general. You just wouldn't want to swim in them or eat the fish. Is we still in that place where we feel that constructed wetlands add to the overall biodiversity of the city?
Absolutely, yes.
So I thought that would, you know, in relation to Sarah's, wonder if we can put that while we acknowledge that they have a proactive role in, can we put that in the submission?
In the notice of appeal?
Yeah.
Yes, we could.
Because I think it's always nice in an appeal process to comment on what you support and what you don't, so it's really clear that you're not just trying to chuck that particular rule out. The other thing is that in the review of Te Ture Whaimana, it's unlikely that the overall status of that document is going to diminish because it's a treaty settlement, right? So at the moment it's give effect to, right? So that's the highest bar in terms of legal planning. We wouldn't be expecting anything that would diminish that high bar that we've got to achieve.
No.
Okay, so there again, so what you're saying is that we have to look at the detail within it to make sure that that can be done in a time frame and a cost that we can all bear. Yeah?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you. Just in response to Sarah's comment too, would it be useful for the council to be refreshed on the LGNZ Three Waters approach, because that responds directly to government's increasing standards across all three waters? I think that might be useful. Certainly, I think for Sarah, understanding the and others, Councillor Hamilton, for example, who spoke about the forward costs. Yeah. Understanding where local government sits on it. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. I think can somebody move? We're not going to make any changes. I haven't heard anybody proposing to make any changes. Councillor Wilson? No? Happy to move? Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bunting? All right. We'll go into debate, if there is any. Anybody want to speak to it? I don't see anybody wanting to speak to it. Great, so we'll go to the voting button. Thank you.
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Thompson is voting by audio-visual link.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for your work. It's a very complex body of work and with many moving parts and many stakeholders across the entire length. And I think this is a good message to us that we're part of the same. We're taking water out of the same bucket, which is Lake Taupo, and we're taking it from the same hose, which is the Waikato River, all the way along the length. So we've got to be mindful of the whole system of water. Thanks for the good work. Appreciate it. So that brings us on to item 9, which is the open recommendations from committees to council, which I'll just get to. Oops, what page is it? 45, sorry. Just get to page 45 if I can. Right. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay. Perfect. Moved by Councillor Pascoe, seconded by... Yep, we'll get to that. Councillor Bunting. Right, we'll take questions now on... Is there any need to go over the report? No? We'll take questions and answer.
Yeah, no, just a little procedural question, to be honest.
Sure.
The very last note on the last page is about the Te Inouai Park naming, which we only agreed on yesterday. So what is the timeline on between committees? You know, because we had a committee meeting yesterday and we got this on the agenda today. It is really quick work. It's great. Brilliant. So, I mean, is there anything to stop us? No, it's rocked me. No, that's not kind. No, but what's the procedure on that normally? Is it normally?
In terms of, are you talking about in terms of recommendations coming?
Yeah, because this couldn't have, if we had turned this down yesterday, this might have still been sitting in here, or was this a late addition?
Yes, this was this added this morning? It was added this morning from the
So
meeting yesterday.
how close can we run those things? There's no law that says.
There's no time frame.
Right.
We normally, what happens is we just aim to get the recommendation to the next council meeting.
Yeah.
But because we've got this electronic software, it
Isn't
enables
it
us to do it
amazing?
really quickly.
Yeah.
So that's the process. There's no need to wait time.
Nah, just more thinking about the public notification and stuff like that. If
Yeah,
there's
so
any...
there should have been a notification that went out.
Oh, I'm not complaining, I'm complimenting.
Yeah, so there was a note in the agenda saying that it would be tabled at the meeting.
Yes,
Or during,
yeah,
yeah, so that's what it was, and because it went yesterday.
That's good to know, that's really expedites.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, that wasn't hugely
No.
gripping, but yeah.
Councillor Gallagher.
Confirm that Councillor Bunting, in terms of the third reading, would have the opportunity to debate it as well this morning if he so chose.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Chair, Councillor Robb, do you want to make any comments on that?
It's all pretty self-explanatory. There, we've had the questions and we've debated each of the 4 parts of the Finance Committee recommendations. So unless anyone wants to do a third or fourth or fifth or sixth reading, I'm happy to move it without debate.
Okay, thank you. I should have asked you that at the very beginning, so sorry about that. It's been seconded, but thank you anyway. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion on any item? The recommendations on page 45.
No, from Finance.
From Finance.
So the risk is coming up, the risk is reported separately.
We haven't moved them all.
No.
Yeah, we're only moving the finance one.
Yeah, sure, because obviously I have questions on the risk stuff, risk and audit.
Okay, thank you. Is that part of this one? No, that's the next one. Okay, thank you. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Please vote by the button. Sarah, in support? Sarah, are you in support?
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that
perfect.
Councillor
Thank you.
Thompson is voting by audio-visual link.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the next one, which is Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee. Happy to move, or do you want to move, Councillor Pascoe, and I'll second?
Sorry,
Strategic risk and assurance. Thank you. Questions? Questions, hang on, just track the mood. Councillor Gallagher.
Yeah, look, obviously if this is an interesting committee because the chair is not on the council per se, so that the council approves the amended risk management policy, and you talk about the audit proposal letter, and I apologise if this in the agenda. Where do I find that, Becca? I may be not reading it properly.
It's in the committee.
If I've missed it or...
The details in the committee agenda.
No, we see the issue here, procedurally, I'm in this council, and you're asking me to approve the amended risk management policy. Obviously, I don't sit on that committee, so obviously I don't have an appendix. I don't know what I'm voting on, and I have, not being a member of that committee, I don't have context. The workshop the other day was exceptionally useful. Thank you for that. But this is a committee that traditionally I don't necessarily have. I have observing rights if I want to go along. I don't have speaking rights. That's cool. So I'm just trying to work out on these two where making it more efficient and easy, because I can't vote on this unless I've know what I'm voting on. And look, I'm not being difficult. Trust me.
No, so noted. So what we would normally do is we would have a link to the agenda in the minutes, but because it went out quickly, I don't think we've been able to do that yet. But what we can do is there any urgency in getting this one through today? No. We can leave that to the next council meeting.
So constructively, and I think, you know, obviously teasing that workshop for those of us who are not on, and thank you for those who are on that committee, because it's a really important committee. But I'm wondering if we might do a wee bit of work of how we, the work of Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee, workshop's great, gets exposure at full council, and I'm not talking about long debates. I'm just looking at really important
conversation with the chair. So I've asked the chair to consider a 6-monthly/quarterly report, which I'll expect you to present to this committee together with the chief executive. Sorry, to present to full council. Sure. So that's underway. But just to be aware that the downside of what you identified this morning was a one-off.
David.
Yeah, I was also going to add to that. Through the chair, that we also, through the terms of reference, bring the strategic risk report through to full councils twice a year.
Yeah.
So basically, what we've got at is that I think you can, if you're asking me to approve the amended, that comes back next month, and I think you've answered that. I think dare I say it, it's such a crucial piece of work, and thank you for those who are on that committee. But just a matter of working that seamless to the full. Thank you.
So if we delay it, it'll be August,
Yeah.
which allows you, because the full details are on diligent, of course, under the correct meeting.
Just checking with David that it's going to be.
I'll go back and check in terms of the timeframes around the audit letter. It may be that we need to bring that back.
Councillor Pascoe, do you want to speak to it in any way?
I think it might, if Councillor Martin is happy, it might be preferable to approve the audit proposal letter, because that's the 2020 audit included.
Oh, right.
And I don't see that perhaps as being needing a deep dive as perhaps the amended risk management policy might be. And given that they are working on the audit now, and we would expect before August the audit to have been largely completed, I think it would be useful to approve the audit proposal letter, which is really the audit plan for this current year.
No, I'll take your advice on that through the chair.
Okay,
receive that advice, and it just obviously I'll focus on the risk management policy review, and with that comes a clarification as to how we report this committee to full council. Thank you.
So a couple of actions from that. We're going to split out the audit and approve audit letter and approve that today. We are going to remember to put the link in, which would have enabled you to click on it and prepare. So, in respect, we'll leave the other one to August.
Yep.
So is everybody clear? Do you want to put it up without that? Oh, Councillor McPherson, question. No, I didn't. Councillor McPherson.
Can you confirm that Madam Chair, that the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee, is thrilled at Councillor Gallagher's offer to go on the committee, given the problems we've had with quorums, and that his extreme interest shown in it will be an advantage to the committee.
To be quite honest, the independent chair has encouraged and would be very welcoming of as many councillors in the room for those, and she says that all the time. Yes, we do have that issue. You're right, we have an issue of quorum to sort out. We may need to put an extra person on there. We've got some ideas about that to give ourselves the buffer, you know, because it just takes one person not to be there and we hold up business, and that's not very expedient. So, but yes, the best way to learn about the committee is to participate in the committee meeting, even if you're not voting. But you know, okay. So let's go to the recommendation. Okay, we've got it up there. Councillor Pascoe has moved. I've apparently seconded. Did I? Oh, that's good. Okay. We'll go to the vote. Thanks. Just easier to.
Sorry, could we get the recommendation on the screen for a moment?
Oh,
is it just the proposal there now?
Yes.
Yep, so it's just the audit proposal letter going up, Sarah, and we're going to make a note that the risk management policy review will come back for approval in August.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. See, there it is, Sarah, on your screen now.
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Thompson is voting via audio-visual link.
The last one on this set of open recommendations is the Community Committee, Councillor Bunting, with the, thank you, moved, seconded by Councillor Naidu-Rofe. Do you want to speak to this in any way? You do not? Does anybody got any questions about it? Nobody does? That's brilliant. So we'll go to the board and vote on this one. Thanks. So, councillors, we're going to move into a resolution to exclude the public next.
Can I just read that vote? Sorry.
Oh, read the
so
vote.
The motion
sorry.
is carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Thompson is voting.
So we'll have a quick 5-10 minute stretch, grab something, come back, and we'll be in public excluded. Please, well, before you go, can I have someone move that we move into public excluded? Councillor Maxine, Councillor Naidu-Rofe. All in favour? Okay. We will be back in 11 on the button to get through the last things.
11 on the button.
11 on the button.
Cool. Feels cool, right? It gets the warm and cold in here. It's quite the hottest temperature.
Yeah.
How long are you going away next Wednesday? Well done.
You have to.
You're going to leave your work fine Perry somewhere, are you?
Yeah, well, Jeff will be here, and Jeanette will. You know, look, Jeanette will feel anything I urgently need to.
Maybe what you need.
We're overlapping with her for the first
Yeah, so maybe you get her to be a triage, so only she contacts you.
Yeah, and James is still on board, but I told him he has to take a day's leave without pay. If he takes it in 2 halves or a whole day, that's up to him, but he needs
Leave without pay, leave with pay.
leave with pay.
Yeah, don't say leave without pay. He's got enough time off from Lou.
Yeah. I think so, I said. God, I'll have to check that. That's what it said.
Don't you even stitch them up.
No.
Right.
No. I'm sure I said that, actually. I'm sure that's what he took, but I'll just...